All right, everybody. Well, first and foremost, we are back again, still continuing to navigate the software because, as you know, despite best preparations, things don't always go to plan, but we're going to make it work. So, I am just so excited to introduce our panel of speakers this evening. And I'm actually going to break from convention a little bit because usually what I do is I would have everybody kind of go around and introduce themselves. And of course, there's nothing wrong in doing that. But what I wanted to do kind of this year, just because the people on this panel are just so near and dear to me, I kind of wanted to break convention and just try to explain kind of who they are, and more specifically, who they are to me. Because you've probably had a chance to read their incredible bios that are so inspirational. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of start here. So I think, first of all, Kalina, I'm going to start with you because we haven't literally spoken in probably about 10 years since I first came back from London. But when I think of you, I just think of the epitome of champion in every single sense of the word. And I mean that. You know, for me, the epitome of grace, kindness, selflessness, servant leadership. And I know that's something that you've mentioned in kind of previous interviews, and I can't wait to discuss that further. But even when we started our career together all those years ago, it's like I think all our YMCA compatriots, some of whom are on this, can probably attest to the fact that you were just at a different level. And it's just so amazing to just see the culture, to see the business that you built for yourself, the fact that you had the sensibilities to leave the Northeast and go somewhere warm. So already you're doing things like just so amazing. And I just want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being here this evening because it means the world to me. And I just cannot wait to share your story.
Thank you, Tim.
Nate, you, my friend, are my clutch player. And because for those kind of joining us, we did have to make a few last minute speaker changes just because, unfortunately, a couple of our speakers had some commitments that came up last minute, which I totally understand. But, you know, Nate, just like our history together, it's just, hey, can you help me out? And without even any hesitation, it's just like, yeah, I'm in, of course. And when I think of you, Nate, I immediately think of just infectious energy. I mean, I cannot think of a moment where you don't have a smile on your face. And I think for me as an athlete, it's going to be so amazing about your story is you just strike this perfect balance for me between competitive drive, joy, and playfulness. You know, watching you as an athlete is like watching poetry in motion. And just to see what you've done for yourself in Europe, the lives that you've changed. I know it's not mentioned in your bio, but the PPI Academy and how you're helping all these young athletes in Europe chase their dreams for American football. It's just something so wonderful. So again, thank you for being such a massive part of my life. And also too, just certainly coming through in the clutch a little bit. Well, I have to continue to transition because I would say one of the newer people in my life is absolutely the wonderful, amazing Sandra Chavarella. And I'm so glad I figured out how to say your last name because, like I said, I was debating it. I was certain there was a bit of an Italian kind of twist to it. But I know, Sandra, we literally met almost a year ago to the day in one of the most intensive executive coaching courses. And it's something that has quite honestly changed my life. And I think for me, you know, I see you as just being, you know, the archetype of professionalism, passion, perseverance, and grit. I mean, just for everybody that's watching this, we would be doing these like 8 or 9 hour intensive classes 5 days a week. And Sandra, it was what, like 2 or 3 a.m. your time? Does that sound about right? You were always kind of sitting in the dark. But anyway, you would always just show up and play full out. And I think, you know, again, you've also just helped set the bar for me. And it's just so amazing just to see what you're doing with your business, and just to see how you're just shaping people's lives. And again, if people aren't aware, Sandra's joining us all the way from Sydney, Australia. So this is the first year that this event has gone global. So again, once more, Sandra, just thank you for, of course, joining. Alana, I'm doing my best to follow in your footsteps because last year you emceed this and I was the one working behind the scenes. So you've absolutely given me some big shoes to fill. And I just could not think of anyone else to basically co-pilot this event with. I mean, not only are you wise beyond your years, but I think one of my favorite things that just told me everything about you was a year ago when I entered this room because, you know, we were testing the software and I usually enter like an hour early just to make sure things are working. And then lo and behold, you were there already. So it's like, when I thought I was prepared, you were already even like next level. And I mean, if that's just not indication that you're just going to do some amazing things, I genuinely don't know what is. So again, thank you for, of course, joining me.
Of course. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Daryl's on his way. He's just we're figuring things out. We're in the midst of figuring things out.
All right, we'll make it work. We'll give Daryl. I'll buy him a little bit of time.
Okay.
So, of course, our next guest, all right, is purposely someone I saved towards last. I mean, originally I was going to introduce Daryl first, but we still found a way to make it work. And of course, that's you, Lena. And one of the reasons why I wanted to introduce you last is to be completely honest with all audience members. It's so hard for me to even find words to just describe the impact that you've had on my life. So I'm going to kind of cheat here, and I'm going to use someone else's words, and that's Maya Angelou. And I think she had that wonderful quote where she said, people will often forget what you do and what you say, but they never forget how you make them feel. And I think since the time I've had the honor and privilege of knowing you, you've made me feel strong, emboldened, supported, cared for, and that's why you're the epitome of kindness, patience, humility, playfulness, curiosity. And I can hand over heart say that if I achieve even one iota of the impact you've had on my life, with my students, my clients, all the people that I'm lucky enough to meet in this world, well, I know years from now I'll be able to look back and say to myself, yeah, I really did make a difference. So thank you for being an inspiration to me all the time, every single day. All right? I think you're fire. All right? And thank you for all this. I've been waiting to use these, by the way. All right. Now, Daryl, you just hit it. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. All right? Again, I know technology, we're making it work. But let me just introduce Daryl, everybody, because Daryl, I mean, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a few years now. And for me, you are the epitome of presence, elegance, influence, and impact. I've had the pleasure of serving on advisory boards with you, and you are just the person, when you speak, the entire room goes silent. And not only are you just so eloquent in everything that you say, but it's like just the purpose, the impact, the way that you get people to see things from different angles, the way you invite people into conversations. It is like you should make a course on it. Like, it's just incredible. And I have no doubt in my mind that you are just facilitating so much incredible change, in the Patriots, in your role. And again, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and just being part of this wonderful evening. Well, all right. Now everybody knows who this wonderful group is. So I figured I'll kind of start off and I'll introduce and kind of ask you, kind of Daryl. But one thing I just want to say to just everybody that's on this, first of all, can we just give our panelists a massive round of applause? There's a little button there with like little clappy hands. Can everyone just do that for a second? Because again, our panelists, they're taking time out of their day. They could be doing amazing other things, but they're here with us. So yeah, can we just show our panelists first just some amazing, amazing love? Let's just let them know that, again, how much we appreciate them. So Daryl, I guess I'll start with you because, having worked in professional sport myself, you always have to look after your veterans. Like, they're the ones that help set the culture. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that if they get angry, the whole team kind of goes downhill. So you got to look after your vets. And you're actually a veteran of this event. And I had the privilege of welcoming you a couple years ago. But since, of course, I first welcomed you, you've now kind of changed roles at the Patriots, especially in terms of being a director of organizational development. Would you mind just kind of sharing with the audience, some of whom were part of that, just what your journey has been like, what kind of you're doing with the Patriots, and just all the amazing change that you're helping to facilitate in terms of one of the most recognizable global sporting brands, again, the world over.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to share and I'm excited to learn, honestly, and just, first and foremost, Tim, just thank you for having me. I'm just excited to be a part of this panel. I want to start with the thing that's most important, which is acknowledge how special these moments are. And I love coming back to this every year because, just meeting the different students, crossing paths with Elena, it's really cool to be a part of that. And, it really speaks to, and it kind of goes to my journey. So my journey was, I was an athletic trainer for 5 years on staff here. And I got to the point where I was just ready for a change. I love serving the athlete population. And I recognized that, with, just building relationships and fostering things and implementing things such as coordinating mental health and things like that, I started to gain passions of I really looked at what my role was as an athletic trainer. And I love treating, I love covering the field. But what I truly loved was helping people see and get to the points of development of that they never saw for themselves, and helping them grow and develop and learn and expand in ways that they don't see. And so when I had that vision, I recognized that I could accomplish that, through the medical lens, but I wanted to take it in a different way and angle so that I could cover more ground and have more touch points. So I was allotted the opportunity to do that here with the Patriots. So my new title now is Director of Organizational Development. And it's a long way of saying I wear a lot of different hats and depends on the day. I'm a professional firefighter, and I also, really it's focusing on the team, and it's really putting an emphasis on what makes up the team, which is the individuals. And you can't win and have a team without people. And so my job is really focused on doing the things that, surround the athletes, the coaches and staff, because it's really the team is expansive. It's family engagement. It's talking about things, social justice, community, community service, things like that. Art, which has been a great vehicle. We actually had our athletes. It was great because I saw we have people in the art world. Well, we actually took our athletes to MFA. To see the Obama portraits. And so just like as people, we have different lanes and avenues and things that influence us. And so my job is finding that for each person that's within the infrastructure of our organization and help them thrive and grow in different ways that they may or may not have seen in the past.
No, and again, it's just amazing. Again, not only just wearing all those different hats, but also just the innovation that you so clearly kind of demonstrate. And I think, again, everybody can appreciate, just even the title of this seminar, conference, whatever you want to call this, it's change makers, because everybody here is facilitating the change. And the fact that you're spearheading that is just absolutely remarkable. But of course, I saw Lena's eyes light up as soon as you mentioned art. I want to introduce her with this because this is her world. And just some of the things that she's done. I mean, even on our campus, I've done countless number of workshops. You're part of the Cell Health Initiative. I can't wait to kind of introduce that. Before I get right there, though, one of the things that you also kind of mentioned or alluded to is kind of community. And one of the ways, and when I look at community, is also fitness, coming from that kind of background. In Kalina, when I think CrossFit, I immediately think community. And one of the things that you have absolutely done as a masterstroke is you have created the most incredible community. All you have to do is just go on your company's website and just see the smiles on people's faces, people doing crazy workouts on the beach. I'm totally jealous of that. The fundraisers that you've been a part of. But yeah, would you mind just kind of, piggybacking off of what Daryl said and just kind of sharing with the group what community means to you and how you've helped kind of facilitate and spearhead community initiatives as Just Fitness CrossFit owner and kind of CEO?
I think the thing with CrossFit is, people, it gets a bad rap because people just think of CrossFit when they go on like ESPN or go online, I see the professionals, and they forget that it's actually a workout that anybody can do, right? So like you have your gym, and each gym kind of creates their own culture. And because you got people from all the walks of life, but they got to find something that they find in common. And for most of these people, like they become friendships, and the word community is really big, but it's really more like of a culture, right? So like you can be doing one thing, somebody else can be doing something else. But today, when we're here and we're sweating together, we're all doing the same thing. And you can appreciate that, like we're all working hard together, whether you're the top athlete in the class or the brand new person that just came in and just learned what a barbell is. I think what makes people is you're all working at a sense of intensity for yourself, and that helps you kind of bond, right? So now you've got this bond that you're working hard, you're sweating. And then, after these classes in the CrossFit, like we all talk, we all hang out. It's not just about the workout. Like there becomes like a social aspect of it. And with that, like you become friends, and you'd be surprised how many things you find in common. Like for what we do, you keep saying the word, like charities and fundraisers, right? So like we're blessed that we're in like CrossFit, where my CrossFit is a pretty, like we have the opportunities to help other people, right? We're in Miami, so there's a lot of people that are very well off and people that really need help. And we have that opportunity to like find situations where we can bring ourselves to these people, and everyone feels good about themselves, whether it's they're working out and they're making themselves better, or they're helping out and they're making somebody else feel better. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, I think 100%. And you know, in the end of the day, and bringing it back, you know, Nate, again, I always think of you because I think it's impossible to be in a bad mood when you're in the room. Like it's just who you are as a person and an athlete. But not only is it making people feel better, of course, but like you said too, I mean, I love just, you know, certainly the altruism. And yes, you know, and this is another reason I'm just so honored and delighted to bring you on. And I think without going down the fitness rabbit hole, you know, I can personally say just something that I find a little bit unsettling is some of the negative stigmas. I lost it. I haven't recertified, but at one point I was a level 1 CrossFit coach. I've been training. I actually helped own and operate, or at least on paper, but I operated, you know, a box out of my gym. I mean, Nate, you remember that, you know, when I was kind of in my velocity days, because one of the things that we saw is just this power to just build these lasting bonds. And if we want to change people's lives, if we want them to be healthier, if we want to make a lasting impact that just goes beyond the 4 walls, you're right. Just having a good workout isn't enough. Just learning the basics of these movements isn't enough. And that's why I think that is something that the entire world, not just the fitness industry, but the entire world, in my humble opinion, can learn from CrossFit. I definitely want to return to just some of the charity work that you've done too, because I have a little bit in my room here. I got all these different kind of facts. I'm still trying to figure out where things are, but I have a list of just some of the charities that, you know, you have personally in your box have contributed to, and I just think it's remarkable. But you know, you talked about culture as well, and when I think culture, I immediately think connection. And you know, Sandra, kind of segueing to you as an executive coach, that's something that you really help foster and facilitate. But I also appreciate that, you know, on this call, not many people might understand what executive coaching is. And even when I try to describe it, it's like, well, it's not life coaching. It's not this, that, or the other. So, you know, you're someone who's been so passionate, especially about supporting the bodybuilding community. But would you mind just kind of sharing some of your experiences with kind of connection and culture and what that means to you as a professional?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And also, I just want to say thank you for being part of this panel. It's such a privilege and it's wonderful. And yeah, it's just such a special moment. But going towards just the question in relation to coaching, I mean, coaching is really all about maximizing someone or helping maximize someone's potential, right? And it also helps navigate their challenges. So when looking for a coach, and there's all sorts of coaches out there to look for. And it also actually comes down to what you're after. What is it that you're actually trying to find or accomplish in your life? So it could be something to do with goal setting, but it can also be something to do with challenges you're consistently facing or obstacles that you're consistently being confronted with, such as things like, you know, fears or lack of self-confidence. So there's a whole range and a vast of what coaching can actually help you with. In relation to fostering connection, one thing that I found with majority of my clients is there was definitely a lack of connection. And in relation to just being post-COVID as well, as many of the clients that did come to me and want to talk about specifics in what they wanted to achieve or what they wanted to overcome, we started to uncover and deepen what it was that was actually hindering. Mm-hmm. And we found that it was loneliness, and there was that lack of connection and lack of community engagement. And it was really interesting because I didn't think that was going to be one of the top level things that we'd be talking about, and we did. So, you know, by understanding what that means to them, and connection means something different to everyone. So I think we need to understand that, you know, sometimes you read those articles or sometimes you read just things on social media that, you know, how you can connect, excuse me, but but it does come down to what it is that fulfills you, what it is that actually puts something back into you to then either yourself or to give other people. So when we're talking about connection, we know that it reduces burnout. We know that it increases well-being, you know, and it actually does tend to bring a self or a sense of self when it comes to happiness and joy. So when we started to break down those sorts of elements, then we started to actually work on the goals, work on the challenges, and that was so much easier to reach and overcome.
No, and I think, again, thank you so much for that insight, and especially, you know, it's so interesting that you bring up certainly the topic of loneliness. And I think we can appreciate just the power of connection and collaboration. I mean, that's what we're all doing right now. I mean, we're going about it maybe through different mediums. It could be art therapy, it could be fitness, it could be executive coaching. The list goes on. And I think this is what's so amazing about our audience and about this year's panel, whereas in the past, we've been a little bit more kind of laser focused in the sport and exercise sciences. We really are seeing this kind of holistic kind of landscape of just human betterment. But in kind of just keying in on the loneliness that you just mentioned, I mean, I know, Lena, you've written about this extensively, and especially at the height of COVID. You know, I've read some amazing articles by you where you were actually looking at some of the subsect of your kind of patients and populations. And I just want to, like I said, go back to Daryl's excellent point about using art as that expressive medium to connect people and to just foster just a whole bunch of just ways of just dealing with the city. I mean, all you have to do is go through your beautiful website and you can see all the benefits of art. And I know there's going to be quite a few people who are going to give you a massive round of applause. So all my art therapist people, can you just give Lena a round of applause for a second too? I know I got a little bit of a crew here. All right. Like, let's get a few. All right. But Lena, can you just share just kind of how art is that medium and how you've seen it help deal with this loneliness epidemic that whether or not you can attribute it to COVID, I don't know. I'd love to just hear how art has really helped change people's lives in your kind of point of view.
Sure. Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. And nice to see the art therapist chiming in. Hi, art therapists. So I actually wrote that article, I think it was like a month before COVID even hit. So it was kind of a funny timing of things. But I'd say, to jump off what Sandra was saying about loneliness and how she was finding that within her clients, and then the community aspect and connection to teams that everyone else has really been talking about. I think art's special sauce is that the connection and the bridge between loneliness is something that's formed from within. So yes, we can make art in community, and there's a beautiful aspect in that, or in groups. Like, group work is a beautifully connective experience. But I think what's even more special about what art is that it is a connection to yourself. It is the bridging of loneliness and through aloneness. And if we can do that, if we can be alone and not lonely through the experience of our art making, that makes us so much more powerful, right? I mean, at the very least, it helps us survive COVID. And I think what I've found throughout COVID is that the ones that were able to not experience so much burnout in this mental health world were the art therapists, strangely enough, because I believe what ended up happening, I know what's true for me, is that whenever I felt tapped out, whenever I felt a little overwhelmed by the experiences and the traumas that my clients were bringing, and the overwhelm is not being able to provide any sort of verbal solace, right? Because the world really was going through this pandemic. There was always art. There was always the experience that you were having in connection with paint, with clay, and getting in touch with a part of yourself that was distant, in expressing the anger and the frustration and the fear through the use of the arts. And that always brings you back home. And that connection is one that I believe that art can do in a way that I'm not sure most other media, yes, can really accomplish, because not much is really required of their physical body. And there's not really much required outside of having an art supply or two, or if you're engaging in movement, then pretty much just floor space.
No, and I thank you so much for that context. And I love what you just said there. It's like bringing you home. And even if it's that metaphorical home, so to speak. And I think it's just having that internal compass and using art as that medium to do that. And that's why I think, again, Daryl, it's just so amazing. I know we all use that cliche saying, thinking outside the box. I don't even know what that is. I don't even know where that came from. But I think I can only imagine just the impacts that, having that expressive therapy or just giving those in the organization, because I think we can appreciate that professional sport is very, very high stakes. And I think, again, I've been very fortunate. I've been part of that professional sporting background myself. I mean, I wish I copyrighted my life, because Ted Lasso was making a killing off of it. Even though he's in soccer, I was in rugby. But like I said, I mean, it's all in hindsight. But no one knows, about professional sport as well as you, Nate, because you're still living it. And I think not only have I had the pleasure and the privilege of you being my athlete all those years ago when you showed up and you were skinny and, next thing you know, we're training hard, you're getting after it, and you're living your dream, you're winning championships. One of my favorite videos of all time, we were talking about this the other day, was the video you posted on Facebook of you winning the championship, and you have like, it looks like the Stanley Cup. I mean, this thing is like the size of me, all right? And you're holding it, and you literally are walking out, and then it's like out of a movie, the door opens and there's a balcony, and the entire city and town just start cheering. Now, you almost dropped the trophy, which is pretty hilarious. You didn't fumble, and you never have in your career either. But bringing it back to just, you being a bit of a journeyman, can you kind of share with the group? Because I mean, I imagine it can be a lonely road, especially as you set out basically with a bag and a dream, and you, for the last 6, 7, 8 years, have been competing at the highest level, winning European championships, playing the sport that you love, getting other people to fall in love with American football. Can you share kind of your experiences, like what it's been like? Have you been lonely? How's that journey been? Oh, wait, hold on, Nate. I think we don't have the audio from you. Oh, the joys of, try it again. Not yet. Might have to come back to you. It's kill you. Do this. Try leaving the room, coming back, and just using just a different mic, because I know, unfortunately, you can't switch it, but I want to hear what you have to say. All right, so we'll try that, because you were on just moments ago. All right, you don't get away from me that easily, all right? So let me go back. So we'll keep kind of the professional sports motif. Let's kind of talk a little bit about collaboration for a second, too. So, Daryl, I just want to kind of come back to you and wearing so many different hats and making that transition, like you said, being an athletic trainer, being responsible for the athletes, and having worked with some amazing athletic trainers, physiotherapists, as they say overseas. I know, Sandra, you're nodding your head. You're like, yep, that's what we call it. You're always more than the sum of your parts. And what I mean by that is it's the relationships with the athletes. It's not just you getting them back from injury, preventing injury, looking after their bodies. I mean, we're dealing with people in the end of the day. So I guess one of the questions I have.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now perfectly. I'm going to come right back to you.
All right. But I was getting lonely. I'm sorry.
We all make it work in the end. But I guess, Daryl, just if you can kind of continue to revisit, like, just that collaboration element. I mean, how do you manage so many different interacting components? I'm sure different departments, different parts of the organization have competing demands, competing philosophies. How do you get that alignment?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just realized I can't do it alone. Mm-hmm. And I think once I recognize that it's not a one-man band, a culture isn't just one person, it's a collection of people. We talked about that earlier, like the idea in CrossFit, it's, everyone's doing their individual workouts, but they have a culture that's based off of what the gym pushes forward. And I think it doesn't really change setting to setting. I think it's just what, when you're a part of a culture, when you can identify people who are like-minded and recognize the value of what people, putting people first, or the certain things that I try to harp in on. And I just recognize that, okay, my subset and the background that I have is in athletic training. Mm-hmm. So I need to learn about these areas that I'm serving because I don't know enough about them yet. So instead of me assuming or implementing programs or processes that might sound good on paper, I ask. I learned how to fold towels. I learned how to set up the field. I've been a ref for a game. I've gotten chewed out for being a ref in a game. I think the biggest thing that I learned in my role is the humility of being willing to take a step back and saying, I don't have the answers, and I'm okay with that. And I will be hungry enough to continue to search and find them. But it's awesome because my job is really rooted in not only elevating the team as they continue to grow and develop, but it's helping people get their time in the light, whether it be our mental health clinician being able to talk to coach so that he has the platform. And so a lot of my job is rooted in helping those around me have the platform so that they can do their jobs at the highest level. And that's me doing my job. And it's taking a step back and just recognizing that everyone has different strengths around you. And just utilize that, and just like they lean on you, you can lean on them. And I think that's super important in a team dynamic.
No, and again, so well said. And I think too, I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, you're right, folding towels. I mean, I remember when I first started out, and I've shared this with some of my students, when I was trying to break in, I had to actually set the rat traps and also empty them in the morning. And my boss made me do it. Sandra, he was a Kiwi. So, I mean, I know an Australian wouldn't ask me to do that. A New Zealander probably would. And again, shout out to John Dams, one of the best bosses I've ever had. But no, I mean, I think not only do you have to sometimes do those things, but in the same token, I love what you said too. It's like giving people that light, giving people kind of that platform. So Nate, now that you got I think we got your audio sorted out.
Does it work?
Slightly where I can hear you perfectly, my friend.
Okay, good. I can't tell by the 3 little green dots. It's not lighting up.
All right. Now the first question is just supporting Daryl. Have you always treated your refs with respect? We just want to make sure. I mean, being the consummate professional that you are.
Yeah, I have. There's only one time I was in Finland during the COVID year, which wasn't very lonely to me because Finland was open at that point. So everybody in Finland, it was just kind of a normal go around for everybody. It was normal life. But there's a video of me. My teammate there's a pass interference call, but she was late throwing the flag. So I turned around, looked at her, took my towel out and threw it in the air and said, are you going to throw it or me? And then I got 15 for it, but there was film of that. So that's like the only time I've ever really, I don't know. It's, I'm going to be hands off that one. Just let her have that day. That was good. Hey. But to your question, like being lonely, being in Europe, getting there in 2016, my first year, and I'm, me, for the people that do know me and have heard of me, I'm not that type of guy where I like to do things by myself. I like to involve everybody. I like to have a community around me. I like to have people just in my vicinity. So there's never really been a lonely time being an import. You don't really get that a lot because you're brought in with a bunch of probably 5 to 10 other import guys from around the world, along with your teammates that are from that country, Germany, where I play. And it's just, I just have never felt that. The only time I really felt that would have been in 2020 before I left for Finland. Went through a little bit of a turmoil time in my life, but I was really secluded myself. And that was kind of a point in my life where I felt really alone and really down and out. Probably the lowest point in my life, but through the grace of God, I mean, that got me back to on my feet and now to where I'm at today and speaking in front of you guys. So it's my life. I mean, even to this year, I'm really not that type of a guy that's just going to kind of deal with loneliness that way. I'll go out and make a friend somewhere somehow, whether I'm talking to the janitor or the guy that makes the pizza. I'm going to go make a buddy somewhere.
No, I mean, I think that just sums up just who you are. I mean, it's impossible not to fall in love with you the moment anybody meets you, and I think it's just, again, it's that infectious energy in that smile. But even just as you said that, it kind of jogs some memories when we worked together. And I know just like any high level athlete, they're going to experience some injuries, so Colleen, I'm thinking of you too, because I mean, again, you're one of the most humble people, and just literally just types in the word badass, you're going to see Colleen's name pop up. All right. And if you actually look her up as well, you're going to see just some of these incredible kind of accolades. And I know too, just again, doing my homework, I know you've had some significant injuries being an incredibly competitive, successful CrossFit competitor at the world stage, at the elite stage. I mean, what's that journey been like for you when you were going through some of these really challenging injuries that, maybe were even threatening your career at that
time? I mean, it's hard. That's a hard question because as an athlete, you kind of have to push through, even if it's not for as a CrossFit coach to my people that are coming in my classes who are doing this as a fitness to get themselves stronger, faster, fitter on a day-to-day level, would never say that. Like, you have an injury, work through it, we fix it. But as a professional, you kind of have to rise to the occasion. You've got to figure out, can you keep going on, push through the pain a little bit? I mean, let's see. Like, at some point though, I knew it. So I retired from from competitive CrossFit, and I put all that energy into owning my business and running my gym. And I felt like I could put all that energy that I was using for that into all of my clientele. What was it? I had a train of thought that I was thinking that you guys were talking about, and I just completely lost it, about the So where are we going with this? I'm sorry.
anywhere you want. And let me just say this, just as a quick segue too, as you think of it. So everybody that's watching as well, feel free to ask any questions you want throughout this, and also to panelists. As I said, it's like feel free to interact. Like it's. I mean, as we're saying things, interrupt me. People do it. I do it to people all the time, so it's only good karma that people interrupt me. All right. So like I said, like feel free. I want to just make this as fun and inclusive as possible. But yeah,
I remember what I was going to say. So we're talking about like when you're a personal trainer or a fitness professional, I think the one thing that we have to remember is they're kind of coming to us for a service. And I think a lot of people in our profession, because we were the top of our game or the top in our profession, they lose sight of that. And like, we should be leading by example, like they can look up to us, motivation. But at the end of the day, when people come to you, whether you're your coach, whether you're a mental health professional, like it's their hour of the day or their 2 hours of the day, and all your energy needs to be going to that person. And whatever, like the more and more you get to know those people, like, okay, somebody can come into me and tell me, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds. Like that's the goal that they say on paper. But once you start learning them, what are their real goals? Like, what do they do every single day? Like, what do they really need from you? And I think that's what's going to set you as a trainer or you've got to read between the lines. Like, so if they're running in 5 minutes late every day because their kids are holding them up, okay, losing 10 pounds is not their main goal. Their main goal is getting healthy, finding time management, figuring out how to de-stress. Like if they come in there and they go as hard as they can, they are going to be looking at those injuries. And they don't need those injuries because that's going to set back their entire day, everything. Like, and I think that's a big thing, like knowing the person, the athlete, so whoever you're working with, like reading them as a person, not just reading them that, okay, we're going in here and we're going to do squats today. That's where I'm going with that.
No, and I think, and we, you know, for some of my students that are on this, you know, we say, being very elegant, the thing behind the thing. Like that's the best way I can describe it. I haven't found a way to say it any better than that. But, you know, Sandra, I mean, I see you kind of nodding your head. I think as an executive coach, and this is something that we both developed, are continuing to develop our skills, we use kind of that line of inquiry to try to find the thing behind the thing. And, you know, coaching, not only is it a profession, but also if we're talking kind of more of this executive coach, it is an approach to problem solving and empowering the person. I mean, kind of putting your coaching hat on for a second, can you share with kind of our audience just what you found in your experiences in kind of helping people uncover the thing behind the thing?
Yeah, it first comes down to, and this is, I guess, my true belief is I believe that we actually have all the resources that we need inside of us. It's understanding how we tap into that. And that is where a professional or a coach or a mentor can actually step into place and be able to help you navigate that. And that's literally by asking lots of questions. So it's not something that, you know, you're not going to be provided advice. You're not going to be coerced or, you know, pushed in a direction. It is asking questions. You will find the answer. You just need someone to be in your equal space to be able to support you and also have that power of belief, because that is one major thing that I found as well with, you know, a lot of my clients is they tend to not trust themselves to be able to either make decisions or which direction to go in and that sort of thing. And by having someone in their corner and showing them that, yes, you do have that power and you do have the ability and you do have the resources, it's tapping into that and going, and let's work with that. So then they get into that space where as you ask questions, they begin to have those aha moments. They're like, hang on, I do know this. I do know how to do that. I do know how to get from A to B, or I do know how to solve a problem. And it's like, yep, and let's go and work with that. So it's building that toolbox, right? It's building that toolbox and that efficiency. So then when they do step out and they're on their own, because as a coach or as a professional, you're not with them all the time. It's giving them, like you just said, that empowerment to actually tap into that toolbox and take what they need and use it to navigate their day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, the fact that you say it's already kind of inside of you is such a powerful approach to just not only, of course, problem solving, but human empowerment. And I think I kind of want to use this as a chance to kind of shift the conversation a little bit into creativity, more specifically the power of creativity. And yes, you know, when we think creativity, we immediately think of the arts. But I would argue that, you know, Nate, you are creative on the football field. I mean, all you have to do is just watch your highlights and just the way you step, the way you move. I mean, again, I've made you these poor defensive backs that are trying to guard you. I mean, I've seen literally people fall down. But I think it's like what I see about that is not only do you have that approach as an athlete, but I know you have this just like Sandra said, this toolbox. But I think in kind of just going for the low hanging fruit right in the beginning, let's start with art because, Lena, correct me if I'm wrong, but this has been one of the central tenets of the business that you've basically created. I mean, you have created the #1 world's best-selling art therapy app where you are literally giving people access to this medium. Can you kind of share with everybody kind of the journey and the app that you created, the vision behind it? Because it extends well beyond the art world, and it certainly extends well beyond the therapeutic world.
Sure. So first of all, everything everyone said so far is so incredibly relatable, which is really, really cool right off the bat. So the point of the app, which I think is the question you asked, the low-hanging fruit, is in a way of connecting community, right? So it is a community, it's a network of art therapists that offer their practices through videos that are accessible to everybody. So typically art therapists, hidden behind hospitals, treatment centers, universities, but they're, in the coat room or in a closet somewhere or wheeling around a little art cart. It's not something that the average person has access to unless they are being diagnosed with something in their mental health or their physical health, which is so unfortunate because the whole point of art making is that we're all creative. I think that is true for everybody here, right? I mean, we're creative in what we do, and then we're creative in the of our businesses. We have to be. So it's forging a new path that didn't already exist. And so creativity is part of everybody. And that was the essential point of the app itself. That is the point of the app itself. It's accessible to everybody, regardless of physical disabilities or mental disabilities. These are tools everybody can use without any limitations, and they're low risk. So being able to go into your own subconscious or your unconscious is low risk in these situations because you're exploring them exactly like Sandra was saying with asking questions, right? They're your own questions that you're asking yourself to further guide yourself into your creative process. And in doing so, you get to access something that you don't usually get when you're thinking in school or working with your linear rational mind, right? Your linear rational mind gets to take a break and you bring in your creative mind, which is way more of an abstract thinker. So it brings on access points to your brain and your body that you don't normally utilize, at least not in school or in a work-like setting.
And I think, based off of that too, do you feel that that's just something that is becoming more and more lost as we become busier, as our lifestyles begin to change? Because I just feel like when we're children, this is so all you have to do is go outside and watch like a children like playing a game. I mean, here's something that made me smile today. And shout out if this person's watching this, but just when I was on campus earlier at LaSalle, I saw somebody who was like, how they have like the ramps for wheelchairs? Well, there was someone who was bringing a bunch of supplies, and clearly they thought no one was looking. I was, and they were just like, I'm gonna just ride down this thing like on the trolley that has all like the coffees and stuff like that. And you could see him stop and then just look around, like making sure that no one's watching and judging, and then realizing immediately, I'm gonna do this again. And it was just such a sweet little kind of blissful moment. But, again, we make that transition where as 8 or 9 year olds, it's like we wouldn't think twice of doing that. But now it's just, well, who's watching? Is this okay? Am I going to be judged? Why is this so hard? And why are we losing this?
Totally agree with you. Love that you caught that moment because that's what it's all about. That person was playing and then it was infectious into your own mind because you were attending to it and you were noticing how joyful that experience was for that person, and then you experienced that joy in turn. But I think there's a lot of reasons why we downplay the need for play. I mean, it wasn't long ago that we didn't really realize that the brain was able to generate new pathways. And now we know with neurogenesis that our brain is actually able to take in new information, form new thoughts, form new beliefs, form new emotional patterns, new behaviors. And so maybe that's one small part of it. Like there's a longer history of our Enlightenment period and how we teach in our schools, and the idea that productivity and the end result is what we are aiming for. That's really only the sum of our outcome. Whereas there's a really process-oriented use of play that is the whole beauty of playing, right? It's not about achieving some end result or getting to the end of the game where things end. It's about being in the process and immersing yourself in the joy of the activity with your full attention involved, and being able to problem solve while problems are coming up. And they're not problems that create obstacles where we're like, oh God, there's a problem here, we're going to stop, we're doing bad. It's a problem that is kind of the point of the whole unfolding of the process. There's a problem, you solve it, there's inspiration, you solve the next one, there's another problem, and that's kind of the whole game of play. And once you're in it, and I know every panelist here gets this, once you're in it, the act is beautiful and it's so enjoyable. It's the whole point, and you don't even want to get to the end, because the idea of being in the process of play is the whole reason why you're doing it. And I think people definitely have lost that, and I think people are coming around to it now with this whole like influx of holistic healing and wellness as a more mind-body approach, and I think we're coming back to it.
No, and I think again, so I mean, I think that gives us all cause to be excited and happy, because I think we can appreciate the more we lose it and the more that disconnect, the unhealthier we are. And I think again, we all can understand too that health is well beyond nutrition. It's well beyond movement science. It's well beyond some of the courses we've taught, the courses I teach, the courses we've learned at. Because again, you could be in phenomenal shape and have the most dialed in nutrition, but if you lose the ability to access that part of your personality, you're probably not very happy, healthy, or you're certainly not fulfilled. But I think before the thought slips my mind, there's a real dichotomy there, because I like how you said it's almost this autotelic experience where the experience is all about the experience itself. It's not about the outcome. And I think that's something that, you know, when you have these beautiful videos, and that's one of the things, it's like, it's not outcome based. And that's the beauty. It's like, we all tend to immediately think, well, okay, if I want to make a piece of art, it's got to look like the thing or it's not good. And it's like, it doesn't matter the outcome. But in kind of segueing back to kind of the professional sports world, and I know, you know, Daryl and Nate, you know this firsthand, the outcome does matter. But in the same time, it's like, how do young athletes, how do people strike that dichotomy? Because on the one hand, it's like, you know, the World Cup is going on right now. And I'm going to pretend like I know about soccer, and I don't. All right. I know a little bit. I played. Now, I did play on a travel team. We won the Westchester Youth Soccer League 4 years in a row. Sorry about that. No, I'm not. So I know more than the average person. But, you know, I remember too that it's like our coach, I thought, did a great job of finding that balance where it's just like, we need to win because we're past that point where everyone gets playing time. But in the same token, it is about that enjoyment, because if it just becomes so structured and so rigid and everyone is just so afraid of making a mistake on the field that they're scared of their own shadow, it's not going to work. But in the same token, and again, you know, Nate, you know this just from your experiences, and of course, Daryl, you know, being in that high octane environment where people's careers are literally on the line. I mean, what have some of your experiences been? Like, is there a room for creativity in professional sport, or is it just, at the end of the day, you got to do the plays, you got to execute, you know, it's a job. It's not play. I mean, I want to hear from you first, kind of, Nate, just because I know you're still kind of in it. And then Daryl, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts and senses on how you've seen expression. You know, how are players able to express themselves in the leagues? Is this kind of different? Like, again, I'm a little bit removed now, but I always wonder about that. So yeah, Nate, just from an athletic standpoint, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, you have to be. You have to be creative in everything that you do. One thing I've heard my whole career is that there's a million guys 6'1", 195 pounds. You got to stick out a different way. You got to have a different niche that you bring to the table. So being creative in that way is the number one thing you have to do. You have to bring more and more and more and more to the table, so you're not that dime a dozen. Mm-hmm. And I've heard that my whole career. That's something I believe in now to this day. But you still have to, and everyone here that played a sport can attest to this, is that you still have to follow the guidelines or the way the team is going, like how the CrossFit gym is going. How we said that is, people are doing their own exercise. You're your own creative person in that movement. People are doing movements different ways, but the gym is still going in a certain direction. You still need to follow the team in a certain direction. But you definitely have to have that creativeness in you, because if not, you're just going to be that dime a dozen 6'1", 195 pound guy that runs a 4.4.
Very true. And yeah, what about you, Daryl? I mean, what are your thoughts on is there a place for creativity in kind of professional sports? It seems a bit kind of oxymoronic, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love what Nate said. Like, I think even like you look at our panel. Our panel's like a team where
Yeah.
like all of us are so different and we're going at this thing from such different angles. Like, it's like a good joke. It's like the butt of it, like the beginning of a joke if you look at like our panel in a great way, because it's like you have these individuals that are from these worlds that you wouldn't necessarily connect, but it goes to a vision.
Yeah.
And I think we all came out here with a vision that we all shared with, like, we want to provide our experiences so that we could share the students, the professionals, our knowledge, our expertise with one another, and then also put it into the world because we receive so much. And we want to also represent the worlds that we come from. And we also want people to gain an understanding of like where we're coming from, the plight of an athlete. That is one that speaks near and dear to me because I see athletes, like I see them. I know how they, as people, art world, CrossFit. We're on all these different worlds, lands, countries, backgrounds, socially and economically. So I think the biggest thing that, to segue to professional football, I think the biggest thing is that now that the athletes have changed, our world is now changing. It's okay to look different and you are professional.
Yeah.
And we're changing the rhetoric. Like, to be a professional in our world doesn't mean you need to be a guy. It doesn't need that you need to come from a certain specific area. You don't need to, if you have tattoos, that's not necessarily an indictment of you being a part of a gang. Like, I think we're shifting the narrative. And I think like where my role comes in is like where you can kind of, it's really interesting doing it with the New England Patriots because everyone has this vision of how our organization is. And it's so interesting because it's like probably kind of true. but it's interesting because like we do things that people wouldn't recognize, like our leadership, and our head coach is one of the best listeners in the building, and he's very passionate about talking about Jim Brown and like what he did in social justice, and like we have social justice meetings every Monday to talk about different things that are going on in community. We rally behind. We got a man out of prison last year. That we got to help this sentence get commutated, and like we express ourselves through My Cause, My Cleats. If you walk in my office, there's sticky notes that just say write a note, and like we have a whiteboard that we. So I think it's all to say that when you peel back the layers of like a culture, when you peel back the layers, it's like, how do the people within that bubble truly feel about it, regardless of what the people feel outside of it? But it does take recognizing and valuing the people and the individuals and the creativity, because how boring would it be to have one carbon copy of the most talented person that you just don't get the full experience. That's what life is. That's the beauty of life, right? Like, we get the opportunity to be around different types of people when you get to travel, when you get to have people in the locker room. That's what makes the locker room fun. Yeah. It's when the guys from Alabama and the other guys from Tennessee, the one guy's from Ohio State and the other guys from Michigan. That's what makes it like really a cool, robust, I wish we could do less Michigan guys.
As a Buckeye, just for context.
It just makes it more fun when you have people that can express themselves, and the more that they are themselves, then you get to tap into the true depth of their being. And when you get to that point, that's when you have the best opportunity to win. Now you can focus on the process because the vision's never left, and the pitfalls of wins and losses along the way do not deter you. So when you get to the end result, it's just a byproduct. The result is the byproduct of the effort that put into it. So.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Daryl, you did that thing again that you always do, where it's like, I could just end this right here. Like, you literally, it's like, I don't think any one of us can contribute or even just add to it. And I can hand over heart say, I've been in meetings and someone's like, do you want to add to that? And I'm like, no. Like, it's almost like someone's playing the perfect game. Don't give me the ball. Because like literally, like he's on fire. So I just feel like we just had one of those moments. But again, I just think what a novel way, as we start again talking just more about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just looking at it from the way that it unlocks potential. It unlocks the way that groups can interact. It unlocks that creativity. And again, you're right. Who wants to be just in a room with just versions of themselves? Like, I leave myself audio notes and I annoy myself. I'm like, I can't even deal with the past version of me. So God, and yeah, students, I know I have quite a few of you. I get it. All right. I listen to my own notes and I'm like, ugh. So, the thought of having, carbon copies of me, I couldn't think of anything more. I'm getting a few rounds. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's so true, but I think you're right. It's like, now that we're moving towards this more nuanced understanding where you're right, we don't have the stigmas of tattoos. We're understanding that people can express themselves, and whether that's the way they identify or the way that they see the world or, their sexual orientations, it's like, it's all part of this beautiful just narrative and conglomerate where we all can unlock that potential if we're open to it. But I know, again, we also don't have to we can't shy away from the tough conversations as well. I think, Colleen, I just think back to you and just, like I said, some of the different fundraisers and stuff. I mean, you've done a lot for kind of Pride Week. I mean, again, just looking through just some of the cancer researches. I mean, I even saw you did a fundraiser for, it looks like a company based down in Miami. It's like they basically help get dog breeds that people would normally just look at and be like, nope, those are dangerous. And you basically get these dogs like homes. I mean, what does kind of diversity and inclusion kind of mean from your standpoint, and certainly some of the efforts? Because I mean, as long as I've known you, you've been an amazing advocate for so many different causes.
I mean, I think it just comes down to the fact that I like people. I like gaining knowledge from different people and their different ways of life. And like, I mean, I can tell you, like, each one of my classes has a different culture within it in that day. Like a 6 a.m. class is different than a 9 a.m. class. And I'm in Miami. I mean, I got people from every continent in one class. Half the people don't speak the same language or anywhere near the same language, but everyone's there and they're learning from each other and they're gaining from each other, and everyone makes each other feel comfortable. Like, that's what I love about CrossFit, and I know like or any kind of teamwork is when somebody walks in, the first thing you do is you say hello, you tell them your name, you introduce yourself, and then you start bonding. And now if someone doesn't know something, like, they can ask questions to the veterans in the group, and the people aren't afraid to help them. And like it's just a beautiful thing, because people that are with people want to be around people. And I know that sounds redundant, but it's everyone there because everybody wants to help somebody else feel better that day.
Yeah. But I think you're right. I mean, in the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to navigate this thing called life. I mean, Sandra, we have a tutor who we both really admire, Dr. Jonathan Aronoff, and he's like, no one gets out alive, so you better make it work, so you better maximize this time. And that's not certainly being morbid or contemplating our own mortality, but you're right. It's like through the power of connection. Thank you. Through the power of connection, that's the way that we can maximize this time. And again, that's why for me, even nights like this that I just cherish. I mean, I kind of joked with quite a few of you before we kind of came to this. It's like, I'm going to be completely honest. This night, like, is me being selfish. I just want to connect with every one of you. The fact that we can have an audience. I mean, the only thing that I wish we could do is get the whole group together and get some wine and some good food and, just make it kind of that real. I mean, this is great that we have this kind of digital medium, and it's one of the positives of COVID, but it is all about that connection. And I think even just as you say these things already, it's like sparking just a renewed interest, or I can't believe I didn't think of that. But, just in bringing it to, Nate, yeah, I mean, just kind of going back to your experiences, and we kind of talked about this, how have your experiences been as an American, as an athlete of color, as this kind of journeyman? What have your experiences been like in Europe as you've kind of navigated, just so many aspects of your career? And dare I say it, young adulthood? Because I mean, throughout as long as I've known you, you've been in Europe more than you've been here. I mean, when I call you, I'm like, what country are you in? That's usually the first question I ask.
Yeah. So it's kind of different. My first year was in Frankfurt, so it's it's a big city. You get a lot of international travel, so it's very open. And then from 2017 to 2020, I was in a small, cute little village called Schwäbisch Hall. And when you see like a Christmas book or something like that, that's what you see when you see Schwäbisch Hall. It's got the nice little houses and what you'd see in the old time movie. We had a place called there. It was like right in the center of town. We called it Stair Alley. It was me with my crazy hair. We had another guy who looked like me, a little taller, crazy hair, and we had this big old dude from the middle of Louisiana. He's a monster. We called it Stair Alley because when we walked down that one street, stores would stop, people would stop, and just stare. Just look and stare. And it wasn't demeaning or anything like that. It was just something that was, you're different. You're out of the norm here. This is not, it's not really kind of, we'd never seen you before. And that's kind of what it was. And now that I'm in Dusseldorf, Germany right now, it's a very same as a very international airport, very international. There's people from all over the world there. It's probably the most open place I've been in Europe since I've been there. It's just there's people from all walks of life. There's people from everywhere, different languages. They have an international quarter where they just serve all these different types of foods and wine, and it's been a for me, it hasn't been a problem, but for other guys, when you go towards more Eastern Europe and Eastern Germany and countries and teams out there, guys have had problems and different things to say. But for me personally, just because I think of who I am, I've never had it to my face, but I've heard from other guys, other stories, and I've seen it. And I mean, it's part of being in the world, man. It's not a easy place to be in with the crazy amount of people we have, but it's just something that you got to deal with and move through, and you got to consciously make the right decision on every decision, which is in every second.
No, and again, and I appreciate, of course, your candor and your honesty, and I think as I was just kind of alluding to too, it's introducing some of these tougher conversations. And again, I appreciate you again just sharing some of those kind of authentic stories and expression, and just speaking of just clearly some elements of discrimination. I mean, I know, Lena, you've shared with me over the years some of the observations you've had as a mental health counselor, and looking at kind of underprivileged communities. And would you mind just sharing just some of your experiences and some of the ways that you personally have been really supporting people of color, and quite honestly just using again your expressive medium and your platform to just make this world better and just give people voice and empowerment that they might not necessarily get on their phone. I mean, that's been such a mission of yours, and you do it better than what I know.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you for the intro into that. I mean, mental illness is not, it doesn't pick based off of race or color or culture, right? It affects everybody equally. The problem is that treatment centers are a little different. They're businesses. So, for example, in the eating disorder world, when I was working in an eating disorder facility in Boston, it was primarily, it was majority white. And it was really alienating for the clients that would come in that were not white. And it was really, really hard to see because they also had eating disorders, but the unfortunate thing was they didn't have any counselors that were available that could understand their particular eating disorder. And then, fundamentally the DSM, which is the basis of all of the mental health disorders and disorders in general, is founded based off of research that was done primarily on white Western men, right? So a lot of the understandings that we have about mental illness come from a really Anglo-Saxon Western sort of perspective. And there's so many more people in this country. Right now I live in New York, and it's a completely different intersection of people. But what I was finding even in Boston was it really wasn't on purpose that I fell into this work that I went after, but I was finding that because I am a brown counselor, I was drawing in people who were also minorities. So that created an opportunity for me to see my work a little bit more expansively. And honestly, the work kind of chose me. It wasn't something that I distinctly set out to do, which I find really beautiful. So now I really get to work with female identifying people and who are in minorities, who are brown, black, every different color, every different culture, every different ethnicity. Most of them are actually international, or they've come here and they've had really, really jarring experiences with like being forced to assimilate to American culture and different parts of American culture. So, I mean, there is no exclusion in illness. It affects everybody, but the access to it and the way that we treat it and the way that we label it with disorders is not particularly inclusive. So, especially in the world of eating disorders, it's a really, really difficult line to draw because everyone suffers from, body image issues, body negativity, restricting food, binging and purging. These are all things that many women and many men can relate to. And I mean, to bring that point in, there aren't even a lot of treatment centers that treat male eating disorders. And that's like a whole other area that I hope to start working in more. But right now it's female identifying people who suffer from any sort of eating behavior that is in any way deterring from their health. And it doesn't have to be a DSM diagnosis, right? Because at that point, we're already in a place of illness. It's already in a place where we have to go ER, we have to go into residential, we have to go into treatment center. There's a way to identify these things earlier on. And for the most part, people know that. And I'm happy to be somebody that people seek out when they don't have a place to go and they don't feel like they are speaking to counselors that feel like they can understand their own journey.
And again, just put so beautifully and so eloquently, and not only, of course, being a real catalyst for change, especially in your domain, but I mean, just again, almost using what you just said as this beautiful archetype, and finding ways. I mean, you have that relatability, but also too, it's giving people time and space, and I think that's one thing that all of us can agree on. It's how rare it's becoming for us. There's that old mantra. It's like we have one mouth and two ears for a reason, because you need to listen more. I think like my mom told me that. Shout out, Mom. But like, it sounds so silly and rudimentary, but I feel like it is the lost art of what Kurt Vonnegut used to say as an American author, like the lost art of conversation. But I think, again, bringing it back to the title of this presentation being change makers, I think what makes everybody here on this panel such a phenomenal change maker is your ability to listen. And I think that's something I just hear just from everybody. I mean, Kalina, like you said, it's like the first thing you do when anybody joins or becomes part of your community. It's like, no, you're not going to be a wallflower. Like, people are going to walk up to you. They're going to say hello. Like, we're drawing you in. And it's no wonder why so many people are going to continue to stay, why so many people, are going to be part of this amazing community, because they're part of that family. Nate, one of the things, despite, some really, and again, thank you so much for sharing that. You're the first person, though, that I've always known, even in situations that, might be uncomfortable. You're the first person to walk over and shake someone's hand or smile or crack a joke or just try to remove that veneer and just try to break down those boundaries. And again, it's a superpower of yours. And I've seen you do it time and time again. And I think that's why it's just so amazing to connect and to just see the way that, in my humble opinion, you shatter some of these stigmas. Sandra, likewise too. It's just you every time we have a session together, the questions you ask, you need to make a book about it, because quite literally, it's like, it's the most thought provoking. It's the way that you get out of your own way. And all of a sudden you look at something in a completely different viewpoint, and I've never seen anything like it. And then, of course, too, Daryl, I mean, like you said, it's understanding the thing behind the thing and just people being people. But I mean, I'm stealing your sticky note thing, by the way. Like, I'm absolutely stealing that. Like, I'm going to have a wall of notes when I get in office, because it's just so simple and it just makes so much sense. So, I mean, again, there's so many different places I can go with this, but I have just a few more kind of questions, because, again, I want to be respectful of everybody's time too. And I just got our little prompt, so I couldn't have timed that any better. But I think as we start kind of winding down kind of the panel, just some questions up to ask kind of everybody, because we have some amazing professionals, but we also have quite a few students that are, of course, interested in developing their own kind of careers. But I guess just one question I always love to kind of ask people is, what's been one of the biggest lessons or one of the biggest changes that you personally felt that you've made in the last year? It doesn't have to be big, it can be small. Again, just something that has just really kind of had a profound kind of influence. Something like I said, that yeah, just kind of has just made you take a step back and be like, oh, like I see things very differently. Just as I'm kind of teasing this out, I'll let you kind of marinate on that in the back of your mind. But I think I'm going to pick on you, Nate, because I miss you and I haven't seen you. So I think I'm going to start with you. You're back in the country. You haven't seen me. So this is my way of saying, why haven't you seen me yet? So,
Thanks for the time.
But I mean, what are, as someone who's a consummate professional, like what's something that you've kind of learned this past year about yourself, or just something you've learned just in general that has changed the way that you go about things?
Yeah, man, it's for me this year, for 2022 this year, I mean, it was kind of a whirlwind. It was a blessing. I got a video sent to me on my birthday, on the 26th this past month, and it was from all the people that I met, and kind of got to bring as family and friends over these past 6 months in Dusseldorf, from some of the top bar owners, restaurant owners, fans, people that are in my little faith group, teammates. And for me, it made me tear up, and it was kind of something I really never sat back and kind of thought about the change and positivity that I'm bringing to people around me each and every day. So for me, I guess one thing that I'm thinking about now is just to not sit back, but to be content and be appreciative to where I'm at. And one thing I heard recently was to be content is to be here. And as in be here is to be in this present moment. So for me, being content is kind of one thing that I had to learn, and just be really appreciative of everything that I've kind of been blessed with and been able to do this past year and this last 30 years of my life. Damn, I don't want to say that. I'm 29.1. I'm not 30 yet. I'm 29.1. I'm sticking to it. Next year is 29.2.
Hey, you've always played by your own rules. Again,
every day.
One of the many reasons I love you. Well, I'm going to kind of mix and match a few of these kind of questions here too. But Sandra, impact. Again, I think immediately of you. I think kind of impact. And I know there's a lot of people in our audience who want to have an impact on people's lives, and whether it's through fitness, through art therapy, through psychology. I mean, I think, and you just said it, Nate. It's like nothing brings us more joy than when we not only have that connection, but it's when we have that contribution. So I mean, Sandra, for all these people in this audience who wants to have an impact on people's lives, and again, I don't mean it has to be massive. It could even be something as simple as helping someone across the street. What's some advice that you give kind of our audience members in terms of just having an impact on people's lives, the way that you so clearly do, not only on mine, but all the clients and all the people that you serve in Australia?
Yeah, I think probably the one thing that I tend to live by, I share with my clients, is be intentional. Be intentional in everything that you do. Don't take anything so lightly and by the wayside. And what I mean by that is be intentional in cultivating your connections. Be intentional in going out and having playtime. Be intentional and make sure that you're reserving time for flow, because it fills you up. So just the fact of when you go into your day-to-day, it's be intentional, be mindful about those sorts of things that you're about to decide and you're about to cultivate for the rest of your day, because we tend to go on autopilot and we tend to just be really distracted all the time when it comes to technology, when it comes to even just if you're a parent with children, colleagues, whatever it may be. But if you can just pull back for that moment and just go, I'm going to be intentional in behaviors that I may want to change, in goals that I want to set for myself. What does that look like? So if anything, it's almost like having the word of just be intentional, right? Because that's how things start to change and shift. And I'd like to take it back to when Nate was saying before about, if he felt lonely, he would go out and just find a friend. That's intentionality right there. You want a connection? Go out and do it. It's not going to come to you, but go out and just do it, because by you doing that, you are cultivating that change. You're making the change for the life that you actually want. So yeah.
Beautiful. And the one thing I had in kind of my notes too, and I read this in an old interview of yours, Kalina, but you talked about servant leadership, and I think it is such a beautiful term. And I know, again, there's a lot of people that are here. They're going to be watching this retroactively, and they want to be leaders of their communities. They want to be leaders of their teams, their businesses, their churches. It doesn't matter. But can you kind of just elaborate on this concept of servant leadership and what that means to you? Because again, for me, you're the embodiment of it. But it's a different way of leading than I think most people necessarily think
of. I mean, I think it's the main goal is like the person who's in charge is going to serve everybody around them, right? So like we're leading by example. We want to inspire people to push themselves. But I think like with the whole idea of being intentional, like we were just talking about, I think the biggest impact a leader can have is the small things, which sound like it's like, when I'm working with a client, they're not going to remember every exercise you did that day, but they're going to remember that you remembered their kid's name, or you remember that last week they had a really hard week of work. And so like this week when they're not doing so hot in their workout and they're like, I don't understand, like, why am I feeling so crappy? And you could sit back and talk back about everything else that they have going on in their life and bring it back to that moment right now. Mm-hmm. I think that plays a bigger role on them. And they're going to take that with everything else that they do. So like, that's my answer.
I think it's a great answer, but again, it's so cliche sounding, but it's not. It's the little things. And I don't know if anybody, like, I would charge anybody on this, watching this retroactively or joining us live, to just Google what the Japanese men's soccer team did, the way that they cleaned the locker room after they last played their game. It's something that they do. It's like they leave the changing room spotless, is the ultimate sign of respect. And it's so interesting too, Kalina. You might remember this. I doubt they still have it, but I remember at the YMCA, they had this little poster outside of the gymnasium, and it was like, the best way to describe it, I don't know what the word is, like amphorious. It's like where you like take an animal and like you give it a human characteristic. So it was like a cartoon. It was like a boy, but he was like a dinosaur, if everyone knows what I'm kind of getting at. And there's this like dinosaur boy. I don't know how to describe it, but it's clearly this kid. He's a dinosaur, and he has a little bat hung over his arm, like a baseball bat. He's got his little backwards hat, and you just see him knocking on the house. And there's no captions. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And it's a broken window, and you can already just deduce from looking at it, like, oh, this kid accidentally took out this person's window. And this little dinosaur is just knocking on the door. The YMCA has its great values, which I still live by. And I think underneath it did say something like, character is what you do when no one's watching. And I think it's like what you just epitomized, not only as a person and a professional and someone I look up to in so many respects, but it's like, that's why those little things are so important. And again, that's something that you taught me. I mean, I remember on day one, like when we first met, it's just when I would see your interactions and the way that we take new people that came in and we're doing orientations, it's like, I still take that lesson. And you're right, it's those little things. But how many people are willing to do those little things? I mean, Nate, you do those little things. I mean, everybody on this panel, we all do it, and we could all do better. But yeah, I just as soon as you said those little things, it just made me think back to that silly little poster, which I still kind of remember.
I think it's understanding that nobody is better than anybody else out there. Like, we're all equals, and finding some kind of common ground and just meeting everybody where they're at. If they're having a bad day, understanding why and empathizing, and just being able to bring them up that day. Cause like, that's why we do this. Like, it's like, why are we really in this? We're to help people feel better in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you guys come to Dusseldorf ever to check something out, I'll get you an alt beer. If you don't hear this saying from our coach, gratitude is the only attitude. If you don't hear that from him at least once every week, then I'll get you all the beer you want.
I still want one of those unicorn hats.
No, I gotta get you a fire hat now.
Okay, well, that's right. So I'm messing up my teams. I'm sorry. Like, I don't mean to do that. Like, I know. Like you, like I said, the journeyman. But I mean, you had some cool swag. I still have the coffee cup you got me.
Yeah.
So Daryl, here's the question too. And I mean, this is one of my favorite questions to ask any panelist member. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's, if you could go back in time about 10 years, what's that one piece of advice you'd give yourself, the younger version of yourself, having accomplished all the amazing things you've done now, knowing what you know now, and meeting that past iteration of yourself? What's that piece of advice that you would tell yourself?
You said 10 years?
We can go 10. I mean, we can make, if you want to do like 7.5. I mean, Nate's only 29.2, and the next year is going to be 7.3, 29.4. So again, we don't have to be so rigid with time. We play by our own rules.
Yeah, I would say if it's about that time, I'd say you don't need to take that shot. It's like you are fine without that shot. No, I would say that would be personally. Professionally, I would say you are that's a really good question. I think if I go back and talk to myself, I'd say, you know what, like, you're doing the best you can. You are worthy. You are valued. You are valuable. You are loved. I think you are appreciated more than you know, and you impact more than you'll ever see. Because I didn't feel that then. And I wish like I knew, but like I was fortunate because simultaneously I had a lot of people around me that would tell me those things, like my bosses, my mentors, my coworkers. It was around the time probably where I'd been my first year out of being a seasonal athletic trainer, working at University of Louisville, the mentorship I received. And that, by being told that, really helped me, because if I was never encouraged or supported by my family, my friends, my inner circle, I would have never gotten to where I am today. And so like looking back at myself, I'm like, hey man, like you're doing great. Like you really are, you truly are. And like, you might not give yourself credit for that. And that's also what makes you you. But like give yourself a pat on the back, because like where you're going and where you're trying to get to is going to be able to have a lot of touch points and help a lot of lives. And so, that's an interesting question, because like, I wish I would be able to. Sometimes it is cool to talk to your a version of your older self, to be able like, hey, like I still see you, I still am you. You're not gone. You're the same person, but just a little older. So
no,
yeah.
But again, it's that dichotomy, right, of evolving but still staying true to kind of who you are and the person that you are. And I guess that's the day I'll do. And certainly, finally, Elena, it's a little bit of a two-pronged kind of question, because I know I have quite a few aspiring art therapists that are, again, either here with us or watching this retroactively. And I guess for those that are working to break into this kind of industry and have the impact, you've been there, you've done it, you've gotten the T-shirt, you've navigated some of these waters. What advice would you give to them, and also anyone else just looking to be that voice and be that trail guide for somebody, who they can rely on and have the support that maybe they're not getting?
Ooh. Well, I'd say in trailblazing and finding your own path as an art therapist, don't wait for permission. Find your own way through. It's, of course, connecting to the community of art therapists that you're able to connect with is a beautiful thing. But you'll find that there's a way that it's done in the field. And if that's not the way that it works for you, then find the way that works for you and do that. Essentially, it's not going to change the practice of how you show up for people, right? How you show up for people is what everything that everyone has been saying in this panel. It's that client-centered approach. It's that belief that people will self-actualize. They know that they have everything that they need, right? We have everything that we need in order to use those resources towards our betterment, our health, and our well-being. Believe in the people that you're working with and give them that care and that presence and show up for them, and they will get there. How you set up your business and what like the process of creating the business itself, find your own path, right? You're probably creative people. You're probably artists. And if you're art therapists, you're already thinking outside of the box. So find the way that works for you. I have so many business leaders and professionals that I work with, and there's very much like this is the way that you make a business, and this is the effort that you have to put in. This is where you have to put in your time. And that doesn't work for creative abstract thinkers, like that sort of like brute effort, or it has not worked for me. It doesn't work for me. And there's a period of time there early on where I was like, oh God, I'm broken. I can't do this the way everyone else is doing it. And like the way that everyone else is doing this